Welcome to Knives Up, session 1 of basic training. I'm Julia, and today we're going to talk about the most important tool in your kitchen. That's right, today we're talking about knives. Are you ready? Let's go. All right, now first up, you want to talk about the top 5 knives you should definitely have in your kitchen. This one is a classic. This is an 8-inch chef's knife. And if you only buy one knife or only use one knife in your kitchen, this is the guy you need. All right, so let me talk to you about this knife. This is not a fancy knife I have here, but it's one of my favorites. Now, it has a plastic handle that's nice and kind of grippy, so my hand doesn't slide around. My husband also loves this knife, so it's good for lefties and righties, big hands, little hands. And the blade is a stamped blade, not a forged blade, which means it's really inexpensive and super easy to sharpen. So this is actually the Test Kitchen's winning knife. This is a Forstner, and I think it's between $40 and $50, and they're bomb-proof. You will have it for years. All right, so this number 1 knife. Number 2 knife is this little guy, paring knife. Now, use this for small tasks, obviously, because it's a small blade. Think about trimming the ends on garlics, maybe mincing a shallot or hulling a strawberry. And much like the bigger version of the chef's knife, it also has a plastic handle and a stamped blade, which means it's durable, easy to sharpen, and not very expensive. All right, next up, the vegetable cleaver. Now, you might want to invest in one of these when you really start getting into cooking, because these things are amazing. Either a vegetable cleaver like this or a Santoku. Now, the blade is a little bit shorter. This is about 6 inches or so, and it's lighter and it's just a bit more agile, and it makes cutting up vegetables way fun. So if you're into cooking and you want to go the next step beyond a chef's knife, this would be the knife I'd recommend. Next in line, the boning knife. Now, yes, you need a boning knife, even if you're a beginner cook. Now, take a look at that blade. You see that? It has a unique shape to it, has this nice curve on the bottom, and then a pointed tip. Now, the other thing about a boning knife, it needs to be a little bit flexible. That means you can really get it in and around the bones to get all the meat away from the bone. So even if you're just trimming some basic chicken or turkey or steak or trimming the silver skin off a pork or beef tenderloin, this is the knife you want. All right, last but not least, the big monster. This is the serrated, long serrated knife. This one's about 10 inches. Obviously, you use this for big loaves of rustic bread. You want to make sure the blade's long enough to get through the whole loaf, but it's also great for really tough vegetables. Think artichokes and, sometimes tomatoes, because tomatoes can be a little slippery, and the teeth on the serrated blade really will grab through and get you a nice thin slice of tomato if your knife isn't on the sharp side. So this is definitely one to have in the drawer. All right, so here are the 5 knives. Now let's talk about keeping them sharp, because a knife doesn't do anybody any good if the blade isn't sharp. And in fact, you're more likely to cut yourself if the blade is dull, because it will slip off the food and into your hand, and we don't want that. So there's lots of ways to sharpen knives. You can send them out and get them professionally done, which I highly recommend, or you can do them yourself, which is pretty easy as long as you have a good sharpening tool. Now, the sharpening tool that works really well for everybody, beginners and experts alike, is a grinder. It's an electric grinder. They can be a little pricey, but they have slots, and you draw the knife through the different slots and you will get it so sharp. But like I said, they're pricey. And on the less expensive end are these guys. Now, this is just a hand sharpener. It's manual, and this one just has one slot, but it's great for me because it's small and it fits in my drawer. And as you can see, I don't have a big kitchen, so space is at a premium around here. And this I just put in the knife drawer, and every time my knife feels a little dull, I give it a go. All right, so this is by AccuSharp. I think it's $10, maybe $15. I've had this for years. All right, now this V, it just has one notch in the middle, is set at a 20-degree angle. Now, most knives, that's perfect. If you have some fancy Asian or Japanese knives, those angles might be a bit different. But for your classic chef knife like this 20-degree angle is perfect. All right, here's how you use it. Put it flat on the board, put your hand through, make sure it's nice and firm, and this is going to protect, this blue handle part is going to protect your fingers. And then you just draw the knife through. Ooh, it makes that squeaky sound. That's a good sound. Another reason why I say these stamped blades are easy to sharpen is because right here, right at the end of the blade, you can get all the way down there so that you have a nice even blade all the way down. you just want to drag it through until you don't feel any hiccups. It drags through nice and smoothly. Those hiccups are actually little notches taken out of the blade. So when you don't feel those anymore, it means you have a nice, smooth, sharp blade. All right, now before we get cooking, obviously, we got to clean this up because sharpening your knife makes little pieces of metal that get all over the board, all over the knife. So you make sure you want to sanitize all that and wipe all those shards away before you start prepping. All right, so now you know what knives to have and how to keep them sharp. Let's talk about the best way to hold a knife. Now, there are actually 3 ways to grip a knife. The first way is called the handle grip. And just like it sounds, you just take your hand and you grip the handle. And this is really also known as a force grip for many people because it allows you to really put some muscle behind the knife if you're going through something a little on the hard side. Now, many people, like me, just use this grip for everything. It's how I learned how to cook, so it's how I hold a knife. But there are another grip that some people really like. It's called the pinch grip. And for the pinch grip, you choke up a little bit on the blade. You take your thumb and your pointer and you actually pinch the top of the blade, and then you put the rest of your fingers around the handle. And for many people, this just gives a little more control and a little more agility, and they like that. So that is known as the pinch grip. And last but not least, something called the finger grip, which is usually used for smaller knives, like paring knives. And that's when you actually place your pointer right on top of the blade. Again, this just gives you a bit more control. So those are the 3 grips. Play around with them. It is such a personal thing how you hold a knife. It has to do with what you're cutting, what knife you have, and what you like to do. So play around with it and find the best grip for you. All right, so let's stop talking about knives and start using knives. First up, onion. It is the most requested demo I get asked to show people how to do. Everyone needs to know how to cut an onion, and it's easy. And I have a trick that'll make it even easier for you. Okay, so here we go. Onion, 2 ends. You got the root end, got the stem end. We're gonna cut the stem end off. Notice I haven't peeled it yet, right? All right, so I cut the stem end off, and then I'm gonna cut it in half through the root end. So the root end is on both sides. See that? Yeah, root end is gonna hold all those layers together while you cut. All right, now's the time when you can peel back the brown skin and maybe that first outer layer of onion if it's a little bruised. All right, now you know what I'm gonna do? A lot of chefs work with the onion at this point and they cut it many different ways. I'm gonna tell you to cut it one more time, again, through that root end so that there's root end on both ends. And now watch this. I'm actually gonna use the vegetable knife because I think it's a little smaller. It might give you a little bit more to see. All right, so I'm working towards the root end. Here's the root end, cutting towards the root end, all the way to the end of the onion, but not through it. So you see how it's all cut like that? Yeah. All right, so then I'm gonna tip it on the other side and do that again. And if little pieces fall off, don't worry, just stick them around the back for later. You'll get to them. All right, so now I'm gonna slice towards the root end, perpendicular to all those other cuts. And then you get a nice dice. All right, and I waste not a nubbin of onion. I go right to the core, and there you go. And after you're done cutting that, take any little bits that have fallen off. It's their turn. Give them a quick chop. All right, and notice when I get the prepped food out of the way, here's raw food on one side, prepped food on the other, workspace in the middle. And when I push the prepped food off to the side, notice I'm using the back of the knife. That is just a nice way to scrape food out of the way without dulling the blade. All right, here, I'm gonna show that to you again, but I'm gonna shut it this time, and you can just watch. All right, and that is how you chop an onion. All right, so next up, a really easy way to cut carrots. That's great for salads, great for stir fries, great for coleslaw. Now, I'm gonna show you how to julienne it, but not a real julienne. This is not culinary school, not gonna get you an A. It's a rustic julienne, but I love it because it's fast, and I kind of like the rustic look. All right, so here I have a carrot, peeled it. Choose the carrots in the bag. They're a little on the fat side because they make this cut a bit easier. All right, so the first thing I'm gonna do is trim off the end, but look, I'm trimming it off at a real bias, all right? And so every cut I make, I'm gonna slice this carrot thinly on that bias so you get nice long pieces, nice long oval slices of carrot. Take your time, make the slices nice and thin. All right, so your slices really should look like that, see? Thin oval slices. All right, now to make a quick julienne, simply take that slice and cut it lengthwise into nice thin shards. All right, when you get confident, you could stack a few on top of each other. Oh, that guy's a little thick. There we go. They're a little thick, you can cut them down, although I kind of like them a variety of sizes. I think it looks pretty, and I don't mind if some are a little soft and some are a little crunchy in a stir fry. I kind of like that variety of texture. Now, like I said, this is not going to get you a good grade in knife skills class if you're in culinary school, but if anyone complains about this in your home cooking, well, you know, tell them where to go. There you have it. Nice, beautiful, rustic, thin pieces of carrot, again, that are perfect for a salad or stir fry. All right, time to eat your broccoli. Now, most people, when they buy broccoli, you just buy the crowns and they don't buy the whole broccoli with the stalk. Buy it with the stalk. The stalk tastes amazing. And here's how you prep it. All right, so first you want to cut off the florets or the crown. And then make sure the florets are the right size, you know, all the same size, so they cook roughly at the same rate. Hold them upside down and cut through the stem and then crack through the top. See, it makes a lot less mess than if you go the other way. And it makes it really easy to see what you're cutting, and you get them all the same size. Oh, there we go. Look at that, so easy. Oh, this guy's a little big. Okay, so that is how you do the florets. Now let me show you the cool part, the stalk. All right, so here's the stalk. I'm gonna trim off this sort of dried out end left over from the supermarket. Let me clean this up here a bit. All right, so now what we're gonna do is I'm gonna trim around the stalk on each side, 4 sides, so it's nice and square. Using the knife, you're just trimming away that tough outer part of the broccoli, sort of like the peel. And then what you're left with on the inside, and this is trash or compost, and what you're left with on the inside is a beautiful, tender, crisp core that is delicious, has a super mild, slightly sweet flavor. You can cut it up. I like to cut it on the bias because I think that's cool. And you can throw this in the pan with the other broccoli. It cooks a bit more quickly than the florets, so throw them in a little later. Or you can cut it up into julienne and throw it into a salad because, again, it tastes amazing raw. That's what I like to do. All right, so that is how you prep broccoli. All right, it's time for bell peppers. Now, the way I'm gonna show you how to prep these, you can do for anything. If you're throwing them on the grill, if you're throwing them in a salad, making fajitas, what have you. This is the best way, most efficient way to prep a pepper. All right, here we have a nice big fat pepper. I'm gonna lop off the top and the bottom, but don't throw those away. Those are valuable. We're gonna cut those later. All right, now I'm dealing with the body of the pepper. I'm just gonna slice down through one side and then open it up gently and remove the seeds. And then use your knife, being careful of your fingers because your fingers are very close to the blade here. Just want to trim out any of those white ribs. All right, so once you have all those white ribs out, you have this nice big flat piece of pepper that you can throw on the grill and it won't fall through the grill grates. You can run under the broiler to make a broiled pepper, or you can just lay flat and you can cut it into any size you want. You can do nice long strips. You can do biggish chunks if you're gonna put it into a stew or a chili. World's your oyster when your pepper's flat. All right, now back to the top and the bottom. Don't throw those out. Again, you can slice them nice and thinly. They're not going to look like the julienne of the other kind, but they're cooked at the same rate, which is half the battle. Or you can cut them into nice chunks if you're going to put them in a chili. And that was the bottom. Same with the top. Get the top, pop out that core, and then you have pure pepper that you can just cut into whatever shape you want. All right, next up is cabbage, everyone's favorite vegetable because it's cheap and you can do anything with it. You can saute it, grill it, broil it, braise it, eat it raw, and it's really good for you. So what you want to do, if you buy a whole head of cabbage, first thing we're going to do is cut it in half. The first cut I like to do upside down. Go carefully, use a big knife, and go right through that core. All right, so you have a half a head of cabbage, and I'm going to cut this in half again, also known as a quarter. All right, so working with a quarter of a cabbage at a time, I'm going to cut out this core right here just by angling the knife down. There we go, get rid of that. And now what we have is pure cabbage leaves. Now, if you want to shred this, which is what most recipes do, or many recipes do, what you do is you take a bunch of layers, just a stack of layers, and you pull it off the rest, and then you can put it on the board and you can press it flat, and then it's so easy to just slice it nice and thinly. So just pressing it flat, slice it nice and thinly. One thing I want to point out is what I'm doing with this hand. This hand, the non-cutting hand. This is the hand that's going to get cut if you don't know what you're doing. What you want to do is called a claw. Some people call it a bear claw. Just, pinch your fingers together, especially the pinky and the thumb, because those are the two that are going to get nailed, right? And then these three kind of sit together in front, and then just keep them out of the way. And eventually, when you get bold enough, you can actually rest the knife blade against that middle knuckle. And that middle knuckle then will tell you how far apart you are from the previous cut. And that's how you can gauge how thin or thick something is. But that takes practice. There's only one way to learn, right? All right, so there you have it. Nice shredded cabbage, ready for anything. All right, so the last vegetable is cherry tomatoes. Everybody loves cherry tomatoes because they're always in season. They have a sweet flavor, and you can do anything with them. You could throw them on pizza, you could add them to a salad, you could roast them to make a tomato sauce. But the thing is, most recipes have you cut them each in half. Yeah, one at a time. But here is an easier way to cut cherry tomatoes. And this also works for grapes or pitted cherries or olives. So what I have here are two lids, same color as my shirt. They're lids just from a storage container, but you can also use yogurt lids or deli lids from the olive bar at the supermarket. Or you could use little luncheon plates or saucers. But I think the lids work best, especially if they're nice sturdy plastic ones like this. All right, so I washed these tomatoes already. You put them in the lid, you line them all up, and then you take the other lid and you put them on top. And for this, I'm going to use Mr. Serrated knife because it's perfect for going through tomatoes, especially for this tip. All right, hand on top, flat, flat, flat. And you just slide the knife through the middle and voila, halved cherry tomatoes. I know, if you've never seen this trick before, it is a total game changer. You're welcome. All right, so that is it for Knives Up. Thank you for watching. I hope you learned a little something and keep on cooking.